ways to get paid after a car accident that you didn't know it.
And a wonderful Tuesday night, everybody. Chris McDonald with you as we do day 2 of the week after Easter. And let me just remind everybody, we will be back on here late tonight, probably around 10:30, 11. Dr. Smith will be with me next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. And but we're going to have a special sort of news wrap tonight. We've got a lot of things to talk about with you. We'll take your questions. But tonight, I am grateful. I tell you, there is some guest I've had on this show for the last 7 or 8 years I always look forward to. And this is one of them. Retired Judge Cheryl Lynn Allen, our dear friend up in Pennsylvania. Buddy, it is so good to see you tonight, Your Honor. I call you Buddy. I'm trying to be respectful to your title, but it's hard because you're just a friend. You're just a precious woman of God, and I appreciate you taking your time out to talk to us on the McFiles when you can, and it's so good to have you on tonight. It's grateful to have you on the McFiles by phone tonight.
Well, it's good to be here, Chris, and I always enjoy talking to you, and you can call me Buddy anytime.
I'd be afraid to come into your court and call you Buddy. I would call you Your Honor, and I see these judge shows where these defendants are so rude to the judge, and I was like, Chris would be so scared. If I ever came before a judge, I'd be nervous as a cat. I wouldn't dare do that. But I'll call you Buddy, and you can call me the same. Your Honor, I want to ask you a question tonight. One of the reasons I brought you on, and I don't want to get deep in the weeds of all these cases, but I do want to talk about, we talked a little bit this afternoon about how this warfare and judicial tyranny is tearing up the country right now because President Trump cannot seem to be president. It's like these judges have taken over and they seem to believe that they are the executive branch of government, and they're not. And you served on the judiciary for 30 plus years, and I'm just curious from your perspective, what is your take on all of this? And, there's so much politics. I think, what was it that you said to me today, that the law only works unless politics get involved or something to that effect? Because there's a lot of politics going on, and there shouldn't be, because this is a serious situation. This intrusion of these separation of powers.
Well, I was referring to the fact that several years ago, I was asked by the Philadelphia Inquirer what I believe to be the greatest impediment to justice in our court system. And I believe this was maybe 2015, or it had to be prior to 2015. And I gave them a one-word answer, and that word was politics. Now, there is a reason why judges serve longer terms than any other branch of government. In Pennsylvania, where judges are elected, they're elected for 10-year terms. And their first election is a partisan election. But for every 10 years that they serve after that, it's a retention election. And the reason for that 10-year term and the subsequent retention elections is because they want to keep judges away from politics. Because as a judge, your decision is supposed to be made based upon the law of the land or the particular state or the federal government, and I should say, the Constitution. So on a federal level, judges are appointed by the president, and they have lifetime terms.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
So the idea is, you don't want a judge in office who has to depend upon raising money to be reelected, forming favor with various political interest groups in order to stay in office. You want to keep the judiciary free of political concerns. And that's not what we're seeing these days. You cannot hear about a federal court decision without first hearing who appointed this judge, which presidential administration appointed the judge. The idea being, if it's an Obama appointee or a Clinton appointee or a Trump appointee, then we're supposed to assume that decision, the decision that judge made, aligns with the person that who appointed them.
Right.
And that is just wrong. And then the other side of that is this. There are very often political positions or political decisions that are sought where they know they cannot get the desired position from the from the legislature, who is really the body of government who is supposed to make the laws. And when they have determined that they can't get a particular position from the legislature, they decide to do it through the courts. And that's what we've seen in Pennsylvania. That's what we see on a federal level. That's how we've gotten some of the decisions that we've gotten, like Roe v. Wade, or
yes,
or some of these other decisions that should be decided by the states, by the state legislature. And that's what I mean when I say the greatest impediment to justice in our court system is politics. Because when judges play politics, or resort to political decisions rather than constitutional or legal decisions, we get the kind of lawfare that we have seen, especially over the past 4 years.
That's correct. Let me ask you this. This level of lawfare is coming from the lower levels. It's coming from the these lower level federal judges. A lot of this, we talked about this afternoon. There's been basically a split. The Supreme Court has got one right, they've got one wrong. They've sided with Trump on one of the big cases. This 7-2 decision they made yesterday was basically, over the weekend, it was an emergency stay, basically forbidding him to deport the illegals under the Alien Enemies Act. Alito and Thomas really just excoriated the majority.
Or was it a permanent?
It's temporary. It's a temporary. It's a temporary thing. They want to hear the case, but my question to you is going down to the level of authority. How does these lower courts? Does not Congress have power over those judges? I know you mentioned that the president appoints the federal judges, but these some of these circuit court judges on the lower level are doing the most damage, and they seem to be like a judge in San Francisco. If he don't like something Trump's doing, he's issuing this order, and it affects the whole country. And am I right in saying that Congress can stop this if they can take these judges and remove their power, correct?
Well, we have, in the federal court system, we have districts.
Right.
And circuits. And so how a federal judge exercises jurisdiction over the entire country, I don't understand that at all. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're fine. Yeah, everything's fine. We're hearing you. We're listening.
I don't understand that at all. And I mean, if someone wants to file a lawsuit in the Third Circuit, where Pennsylvania is, it has to be because of something that occurred within the Third Circuit. And so, again, when someone has an agenda and they know that they cannot go through the Congress if it's a federal issue, and they can't go, they don't anticipate that they can get the desired result from Congress, then they go to the courts. And it's a very, very corrupt system. It's a blatant ignoring of the separation of power and the Constitution, where people are able to make decisions based upon their political ideology rather than the law. And that's what we saw. That's what we've seen increasing. We see that increasingly in our system, but we really saw an uptick in that over the past 4 years.
Have you, whenever you were on the bench and back in the day, did you see a lot of this then, or is this just something that's new? I've seen these figures where Trump is, they have like almost quadrupled the number of injunctions against him compared to Bush Jr., Clinton, Obama, and Biden himself. And this seems to be a Trump thing, is it not? Or it seems to be, at least.
I think we've always had politics interfering in the justice system to some degree. But I agree that there has been a tremendous increase over starting in 2016. Yes. People decide that they don't like the person who attempted to implement the law, and so they ignore the merits of the decision as it relates to the law and make decisions based upon their political ideology, their political point of view. And that's not what our justice system was intended to do. The legislature makes the laws. The executive branch is to enforce the law. And the judicial branch is to interpret the law. Now, we have a president in office at this point who is trying to enforce the law. I'm not aware of any country in the world that just allows people to come across the border.
I don't either. I don't either.
So we do have laws on the books. So we have a president who is attempting to enforce them, which is what he is supposed to do under the Constitution of the United States. His primary purpose is to protect the citizens of this country. But we see people with an agenda. And we see that there are people in positions of power who, it appears, their objective is to destroy this country. That's the way it appears, because that's the only goal that you could possibly have if you believe that people should be able to just come across the border. And if you believe that all the constitutional protections that that citizens in this country are entitled to should be extended to people who are violating our laws. And if you come across the country, across the border illegally, then you violated the law. I have a daughter-in-law who just became a citizen after being in this country for 5 years.
Wow, congratulations.
The legal way, the right way.
The right way.
And she finally earned her citizenship. But she had to go through that. She had to go through a process. Why should someone just be able to come in, and why should they be entitled to all of the constitutional protections as well as the benefits of citizenship when they've entered the country illegally?
I'm glad you brought that up.
If the president is not going to be able to enforce the law, then there's a violation of the principle of separation of powers.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up because we talked a little bit about this afternoon too, and I want to get your opinion about this. I've got a strong opinion myself, and I know that this comes across to some as being callous and cold. I'm hearing this word due process a lot out of the media, and especially with this MS-13 El Salvador gang banger, woman beater, probably child trafficker, illegal alien that the media has just adored and the Dems are adoring. And I keep hearing the fact, well, he is due process. And, Your Honor, I got a blunt question for you. If a person, and I'll just use your daughter-in-law as an example, she's legal now. She's got, as you said, she's afforded all benefits of the Constitution. But if somebody's here illegally, is it fair to say that they are not entitled to a thing? I mean, I'm not saying that we mistreat them and do anything bad to them overtly, but you know something? There's no guarantee when they walk into this country, because I will tell you I'll tell you this, if me and you go into another country illegally, and then we demand that they give us due process, we're going to find out the hard way that other countries enforce their laws and we don't, because me and you will probably be beheaded in some cases or worse, and that's our due process that we'll get. And, we're the only country that gives people due process they do not deserve it because they're not citizens. They're not covered under our Constitution, are they not?
Well, no, they're not. And, there is a mechanism under our law whereby a person who is truly and legitimately seeking asylum can do so. But there's a process for that. You just don't come across the border in massive numbers like that. And plus the fact that, we have so many women and children coming across the border, unaccompanied, or children in particular.
Yes.
And no one knows what is happening to these children.
They don't. No, they don't know what's happening.
And then we have a lot of single men coming across the border, just disappearing into our society. And it's as though those who are advocating for this to continue, you have to wonder, do they really care about the citizens of this country?
They don't.
And the senator who went down to El Salvador to rescue this individual, I mean, where was he when the victims of some of these M13 or some of these illegal aliens, and I'm going to call them illegal aliens
that's
because
what they are.
That's what they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where was he? I didn't hear him. I didn't, crickets, silence. And it's just the height of hypocrisy.
Well, let me go further than that, Judge. We've had nearly 50 hostages basically being slaughtered and tortured over in Gaza. And I've not seen any of these Dems get on a plane and fly to Israel and fly to Gaza to get in the face of Hamas and tell them you need to release our American hostages. I've not seen this any of these jackanapes, including Van Hollen, who is a Maryland senator, and in his own state, Rachel Moran was brutally raped, brutally assaulted, strangled to death by an illegal alien, pretty much probably, truth be told, of the same gang that this monster down in El Salvador, who's not a family man, he's not a father, he's not a Maryland man, he is a terrorist. And he would not even drive 50 miles to go visit the mother of Rachel Moran, but yet he'll get on a plane with taxpayer money and go down. It is a travesty. And to me, stuff like that, the people in Maryland, if they had a brain, would raise up and recall him and say, you know something? You're not going to do that, because that is un-American and is unacceptable for our representative to be representing illegals and not protecting his own constituents who are citizens. Is that too hard, or is that right?
Well, apparently it's too hard for him.
Apparently, yes.
You know, apparently it's too hard for him. And again, I mean, it is hypocritical. It's the height of hypocrisy. So you have to wonder, every elected official takes an oath to uphold the law, uphold the Constitution. You have to wonder.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. What is your opinion? I know you know, and I'm not expecting you to know all the ins and outs of this situation with Harvard, but I do want to ask you, just in general, these college campuses that have allowed this anti-Semitism to run rampant. Is President Trump on a pretty solid legal ground in yanking their money? Because that's the other big thing right now. The media and the left is screaming up and down. Harvard actually sued him yesterday, telling him that he cannot take their grant money. And to me, Your Honor, that's a gift, is it not? The federal money that goes to these colleges, is that not a gift?
It's not their money. It's
Thank you.
Taxpayers.
It's the taxpayers.
Yeah, it's the taxpayers' money. And, you know, if this was, if they were allowing racism or anti-racism, if anything that you are allowing to take place that demeans or endangers a particular group of people, a protected class of people, and certainly religious freedom, freedom of religion is a protected class as it relates to employment and public accommodations. And then we have Title VI, which speaks directly to anti-Semitism in any educational institution that is receiving federal funds.
Exactly.
So under Title VI, certainly he has a right to do that. And, you know, it just really blows my mind, because some of these young people, and I've heard some of them, they're so upset about, and I'll hear them say babies being killed in Gaza, but they're not upset about the babies being killed down the street.
Come on, sister. Come on down.
Now, I mean, I have to say it because it's the truth.
It is true. Keep saying it.
And if you are really, truly, or they're not concerned about these young people being mutilated in these hospitals, I mean, if you're really concerned about human life, then you should be concerned about it across the board. Now, of course, you know, I don't want to see children or innocent people being harmed anywhere in this world. Whether it's Gaza, whether it's Jewish children, whether it's Palestinian children, I don't want to see that kind of disrespect and disregard for human life and for the sanctity of life. But why pick on, you know, why are you just concerned about that when you're not concerned about it here? Why are you not demonstrating?
Go ahead.
You know, I mean, I'm sorry, but I have to say it.
No, you're right. I'm not. Look, you say what you want to on my program. You can just let it all hang out for all I care. I love it. I think you're right on. And you know, this anti-Semitism, and it brings to me a question about the First Amendment, because that gets argued that Trump is stamping on Harvard's First Amendment rights to let these kids go out and burn flags and scream from Palestine. You
don't have a right to go out and burn anything.
You do not have a right. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. Come on.
I'm sorry. You do not have a right to go out and burn anything.
Come on.
And you don't have a right to discriminate against, harass, or mistreat another group of people. Now, Jewish students are not responsible for what's going on in the Gaza Strip. And if you think they are, then how does that apply to you? I mean, it's racial and religious, ethnic stereotyping. You know, you must be responsible because of what someone did halfway around the world. That's ridiculous.
I know.
And should not be tolerated.
Well, and again, this is the argument, though, that they're framing it in. It's an attack on the First Amendment. I vehemently disagree with that. I think it's an attack on people's rights. Look, if anybody's trampling on anybody's rights, these protesters are trampling on the Jewish students' right to peacefully go to school and peacefully just exist, because some of this stuff has gotten so vile and ugly that they're looking, as you said, to stereotype races, which takes us back to the 1930s. And we all know what happened in the 1930s when this was going on in Europe. It wound up basically costing 6 million Jews their lives because a madman capsuled that hate and took it to the world, and the world sat by in silence when we slaughtered 6 million Jews in the name of, again, getting rid of the Jews and this anti-Semitism. Do you think, I want to take this to the Supreme Court, because all of these cases, I believe, are going to wind up there. Right. What is your barometer right now on the Supreme Court? I think you made an excellent point a while ago, and I think we all were not really, I wouldn't say we're guilty of this, but I do it. Because when I hear that it's an Obama judge, or I hear it's a Trump judge, or I hear it's a Reagan judge, or I hear it's a Bush judge, we get shocked when they don't sort of toe the line. And we need to understand that justice is blind. It's not about who appointed the judge. Look, I'm very shocked at some of the stuff Amy Coney Barrett's done, but when you start backing up and realizing this lady's background, we shouldn't be that shocked. And I know Trump put her on there for reasons because he wanted her to stand firm on abortion, which she did. But, Your Honor, she's basically siding with the liberals right now more than she is conservatives. And that's happened. It happened with Sandra Day O'Connor when Reagan put her on the bench. She turned out to be a very mixed bag of decision making. There's times she sided with the liberal side of the court, and we can't expect the courts. But I'm just curious where you think the court is right now with these 9 justices.
It's kind of hard to say because there's been so much inconsistency.
Yes.
We have Justice Gorsuch, who's responsible for the Bostick case. I mean, we've seen deviations from what we consider to be conservative positions versus liberal positions. The problem is the way that our Supreme Court justices, their confirmation hearings have gone off the rail. You should not be able to ask a prospective justice what their position is on any issue. The lone issue should be, do they understand the Constitution? Do they understand their role, which is to uphold the Constitution?
Correct.
Which is to interpret the law according to the Constitution, not according to your personal political ideology. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court confirmation hearings that we've seen over the past several years have become increasingly political. And so as a result, especially during the Trump years, you have people in the Senate who are going to vote against a candidate solely for the reason that they were appointed by or nominated for appointment by Trump. I remember the night of the joint session of Congress speech that the president gave, where he stood there and he said, there are people here who just aren't going to agree with me or give me credit for anything. That's right.
And they won't. And they will not.
They're going to oppose everything. Not because it's wrong or right. It doesn't matter. It's because of who it came from. And that is just wrong. I mean, that's not what our government and our Constitution, our separation of powers intended. So you have the majority of people in this country voted for President Trump based upon his immigration stance. A majority of people voted for him because of his stance on the fact that there are two genders and that biological males should not be playing on girls' teams. The majority of people believe that. But you have members of Congress who don't care what the majority of people believe.
That's true.
You know, they call the president a threat to democracy. But they are the real threats to democracy when they want to ignore the will of the people and impose their own ideology or their own agenda, their own views.
Oh, I couldn't say it better. And speaking of this gender thing, I hear Maine is trying to rewrite their constitution to be able to include transgenders and men in women's sports. How does the state constitutions override our federal, or can they do that, or does the federal constitution outweigh the state? Like if Maine does such, and I don't doubt it because these Maine folks are liberal as you know what, but if they
some of them
I shouldn't say all. I want to correct. I've got some Maine people that listen to us. We love you Maine folks that watch McFiles, but it's a liberal state. I mean, it's a liberal state, purple at best.
Several years ago, even decades ago, there was an effort to amend the United States Constitution and include an equal rights amendment having to do with giving women equal rights. Now that measure never passed. As we're aware, Concerned Women for America, Phyllis Schlafly, worked very hard to make sure that it didn't pass on a national level, but it did pass on some state levels, on some state constitutions, that women, enjoy equal rights with men. Well, what they have attempted to do, and we saw the Biden administration attempt to do this in Title IX, to redefine what a woman is.
Wow.
And that's been the issue. So they want sex discrimination to include gender identity and sexual orientation. So they want to expand the definition of what is a woman. That's why Ketanji Brown Jackson couldn't or would not define what a woman is.
Yeah, crazy.
And because they want to say that the definition of gender is fluid and not fixed. And that's the whole idea. So if you can amend your constitution to expand the definition of what is a woman, that it's not simply a biologically determined concept, but it's not based upon your biology, or as they say, based upon your sex assigned at birth, which is ridiculous in and of itself, because we know that sex is not assigned at birth, it's assigned at conception.
Is Maine going to get away with this? Yeah.
Huh?
Is Maine going to get away with this, you think? Because they've sued the federal government.
I don't know. I mean, in today's court system, who knows?
I know.
That's the problem. Because they shouldn't be able to get away with it.
No, they shouldn't. But that's what scares me, Your Honor. And this is where I think that me and you are solidly. I think we share this same. I heard it in your voice this afternoon. I hear it tonight. There's so much uncertainty right now as to the direction of the judicial branch of this country, and it's turning out to be a scary proposition that we're basically going to be because they're not elected. These judges, though, are running as if they are doing the will of the people. They're usurping the will of the people because the president was elected to do a job. These judges were not. And is that not how communist governments take over the states and the nations they're over? Is this not leading us into a communistic, fascist totalitarianism where the judges are telling us what to do and not our legislators and our executive branch?
I recommend that everyone read the book, The Naked Communist, where the author points out 45 goals to accomplish just what you're talking about. And the court system, the use of the court system is part of it. To use the courts to pass these laws or to make these things laws,
right?
Especially when you know that you cannot use the legislature, that you're not going to accomplish something through the legislature either as quickly as you want to accomplish it or as easily as you want to accomplish it. So again, our court system has been extremely politicized, very politicized, and whether judges are elected, as they are in many states, including Pennsylvania, or even in cases where they are appointed, it's still a very, very political process.
Yeah, it is. Let me ask you this, and I know that, and folks, let me just do a little house cleaning. You're listening to a very special live McFiles Tuesday night. We got our dear friend Judge Cheryl Lynn Allen. We're going to keep her for a little bit. We will take your questions shortly. Just hang on to those in your comments. We will take all of that and discuss a little bit of things with her tonight. Your Honor, I know one of the questions that I get often, pretty much out of the bat, when we talk about these things is how can these judges be stopped? And, I don't know if there's an easy answer to that because, impeaching a judge is very hard. And if Congress is not going to do anything, like if these Republicans are not going to stand up and fight against this tyranny, I don't know who can, because President Trump is powerless. Other than he just thumbs his nose at it. And the way these judges are threatening him and, and so forth. Look at what, and you think about what's happened. Think about these attorney generals, these state attorney generals, Letitia James, Alvin Bragg, Fani Willis in Atlanta, Jack Smith. Jack was a federal prosecutor, but Fani and Alvin and Letitia, they were state people, and they brought stuff against him, and they're still threatening to do it even now. But the question, the million-dollar question is, how do you stop it?
Well, Fani Willis and Alvin Bragg are not state prosecutors. They are county.
Okay, attorneys. Exactly, county.
Whereas Letitia James is the state attorney general. And it's sad because anybody who knows anything about the law knows that those prosecutions were very, very politically motivated.
Without a doubt.
And I don't expect, I expect the New York appellate courts to come down with a decision that will most likely overturn the court decision in Letitia James' case against Trump. Now that the New York judge has sentenced President Trump in the Alvin Bragg case, he can file his appeal, and I'm confident that case is going to be, that conviction is going to be overturned. And I also expect Fani Willis's case to die because she's not going to, and I don't expect the Georgia Supreme Court to overturn the decision of the Intermediate Appellate Court. And she's not going to be able to continue on that case. And I don't think that any other if it's assigned to another prosecutor, they have the right to evaluate the case and decide whether or not they want to proceed. I don't expect that to happen. So those cases are going to to die. The sad thing is, though, that a defendant or that a United States citizen, albeit the former president, was put through that, and he had the resources to fight, but the average person does not.
The average person does not. That's exactly right.
And if it could happen to him, it could happen to any of us. Any of us could be destroyed through a politically motivated, corrupted court system, and that's what we have. Now, on the federal level, even though the president ultimately nominates these judges for appointment, much of that, a lot of that decision is determined by the senators of that state. So politics still enters into those decisions, whether we like it or not. So how do you root it out? I mean, it's so entrenched at this point, I honestly cannot give you an answer. It's so ingrained. It's become so much a part of our system. I don't know.
That's a scary answer. I was.
Yes, it is. But I wish I could give you another answer, but I really am not in a position to do so. Well,
I mean, and look, at least you're honest about it, and look, and that's I think what people need to come to grips with, because I see the frustration when we're talking about this, and I say, well, how can these judges do this, and how can they get away with it? They're getting away with it because
and not only that, it's not only are they, it's not a Democrat-Republican issue.
It's not. That's exactly right.
It's a right and wrong issue.
It's a right or wrong issue. Thank you. That's the thing, and I know that this is why elections matter. But I think we're finding out, because there's been some Trump judges, Your Honor, that's not towed the line of the Constitution. There's been some conservative presidents, Reagan appointees, Bush appointees. We thought they were conservative.
Well, as I said before, federal judges, whether they be Supreme Court justices, circuit court appeals, the Court of Appeals judges, or district court trial judges, they're all appointed by the president. But the president does not know these people per se beyond the Supreme Court level. So the state senators and every state has 2 senators.
Right.
And Pennsylvania here, we have 2 senators like every other state. One's Republican, one's Democrat. And there are a lot of political considerations that go into those appointments. So even though they are appointments rather than elections, they're still fraught with politics. And so I don't know how, I mean, let's be honest. Some states have 2 Democrat senators. Some states have 2 Republican senators. It's not a Republican-Democrat issue.
Can Congress do anything about this, in your opinion?
Well, Congress is the one that's appointed, at least on the Senate side. They're the ones are largely responsible for the appointments and the confirmation process.
Right. Why is it, do you believe
so
that
they could if they wanted to.
Yeah.
The issue is, do they really want to?
They don't. And I'm glad you brought this up, because it seems that the Republicans never stand in the way of these Democrat judges, but when there's a Republican president, the Democrats pitch a fit and do everything under the sun to stop the nominations of Republican judges. The one thing that always bothered me about Amy Coney Barrett, they did not resist her whatsoever. It was almost like the Dems sort of knew they had an ally in her. This is just an opinion. And I almost wonder sometimes, because they crucified Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, they tried to throw everything at Brett Kavanaugh, including his yearbook from 35 years ago. That's pretty bad. But they didn't do that to Barrett. And I know that people argue that maybe because it was a woman, they were scared. I think it was more sinister. I think that they believed that they had an ally with her, and it's proven that she is almost more liberal right now than she is conservative. But
silence is an indication of complicit.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're going to be silent and say nothing, then that means you're in agreement. You're being complicit with the other side. And I mean, when it comes to right and wrong, there's no place for neutrality.
I do have a question for you. Cedric Gibbons got a great question. How does it wind up? Who makes the decision? These judges. I've heard the term judge shopping. His question is that how do these liberal courts always seem to scoop up these federal cases and the appeals court process, at least sometimes? I've never understood. Is that something deliberate that these plaintiffs are doing, that they're going to these liberal circuits to get these decisions? And Trump and them, they're forced to fight the appeal in that dojo before it goes to the Supreme Court. Is there a science to that, or how does all that work?
Well, I mean, I would assume that, as I heard Letitia James talk about the fact that there were 23 attorney generals who were joining her in these lawsuits. Mm-hmm. I think, and I mean, obviously, you look at where you're most likely to achieve success, whether that's most likely to be in New York or in Pennsylvania, and there is judge shopping. Because you have 23 attorneys generals from 23, no doubt, blue states. And yes, there's judge shopping. When I think Letitia James in bringing the charges that she brought against President Trump was allowed to judge shop. I think the same thing with Alvin Bragg.
How do
when there's an agenda, everything is done to carry out that particular agenda.
Yeah, I'll totally agree. Well, what's so crazy about these cases? It's gotten so far out of hand. I mean, you think about it. You got the AP suing Trump because he kicked him out of the White House. You got Harvard suing him to get their money. You've got people that are getting fired for doing nothing, subverting the government, subverting their positions, going to these judges to get their jobs back. Of course, you've got the illegal element. They're suing him and trying to get judges to stop him from deporting these illegals. I have never seen anything like this in my lifetime, that people are using judges for every grievance against President Trump and this government like we're seeing right now. And I tell you, it's unreal to me. It's unreal.
It is unreal, but the reason why it's happening is because it's the fastest, most efficient way to get what they want. It's much more efficient than going through the legislative process. And of course, the legislative process depends upon who's controlling the legislature. So the idea is we have a Republican-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate. So therefore, if we want to accomplish something, we have to go through the courts.
Let me ask you this. Would it be feasible, one way to stop this would be to codify a lot of these things in the law that President Trump wants to do? Would it make it harder for these judges to do this?
I think a lot of it already has been codified into law.
Right.
But they're not following the law.
Good point. No, that's a point well taken.
I mean, seriously, there are laws against illegal immigration. You don't need new laws.
That's very true. That's very true.
You just enforce the ones that are on the book. So, but we're talking about a court system that is motivated by politics and not law.
Very, very interesting stuff. Hey, a couple of things, not off subject totally, but just sort of life in general. The Pope passed away yesterday. He was 88. What's your thoughts when you heard about his death yesterday? What was your thoughts about the future of the Catholic situation over there? Because this Pope was very woke. I mean, you're talking about tyranny and you're talking about judicial things. This Pope that Catholic Church had over them, Your Honor, he was not a very godly man, and he believed in a lot of this social justice and a lot of this stuff that, we're fighting in the courts right now. He would have been all for the people suing Trump. I think he would have been all for this judicial tyranny, because he always criticized Trump for trying to uphold the law here in the country.
Well, I think the Bible is very clear that there are people in the religious community who are promoting unity and a false peace.
Come on.
And
at
the end of the day, a one world religion. Isn't the Bible very clear about that?
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is.
And so in order to have a one world religion, truth has to be compromised. And, Jesus is the truth. And his word is true. And, it's very clear that in order to have a one world religion, you cannot promote the principle that Jesus is the only way.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
And one of the ideas, one of the 45 principles in the book called The Naked Communist, is to infiltrate the churches and promote a social justice gospel rather than the true gospel. And if you look at during the formation of the UN, and Alice Bailey and some of the theosophists, they talked about, you have to get away from this notion that there's only one way, that Jesus is the only way, and promote a more universal type religion, to promote universalism. And I think that on some level, that's what the Pope did.
Yeah, I'm with you 1,000,000%. I'm with you 1,000,000%. Folks, if you got a question, I'm going to keep the judge about another 10 minutes. She's been a jewel being with us tonight, and I want to thank her so much for being with us. If you got a question on topic, she can't solve the Rubik's Cube and can't find the Lindbergh baby for you, but she will answer any judicial related questions. And I don't
have all the answers.
Yeah, I will screen your questions. If I get any crazy ones, I'll throw those out. I'll answer those later. But if I get a good one, I'll pass it on to you. But if you got a question for her, Stephen asked a question earlier tonight about the First Amendment, and it basically says, and this is actually not a bad question. He says, can broadcasters who show sexually exploited LGBTQ material to children be put in prison? Because that goes back again to, they want to screen that if whatever they're putting out over the airways is, again, it goes back to First Amendment, and then they use sometimes they'll use the freedom of the press thing, but it's really a First Amendment issue. But where does that line get drawn by what broadcasters and what shows can do? Because, you go to jail, do you not?
Or what can they do in the schools?
What can they do in the schools? Exactly.
And again, when I talked about those 45 points, that's another one. To promote sexual promiscuity, to promote all different kinds of sexual activity, and to accuse anyone who objects of violating free speech, violating people's First Amendment rights. It's a distortion of the First Amendment. First Amendment was never purposed in that regard. But this is what we see in our news media. This is what we see on TV. This is what we see, what is being promoted in our school system, in our education system. And there are cases pending before. In fact, there's a case pending before the United States Supreme Court. It may have been argued today.
Yes, I heard about it. Yes. Where
parents are objecting. They're not trying to ban the books,
but
or ban what their children what is taught in school, but they want the right to have their children opt out of these classes.
Exactly.
And the school district in this particular area
is Maryland.
It was in Maryland.
It is, yeah.
Montgomery, Maryland.
Montgomery
they're
County.
saying, well, they're concerned about excessive absenteeism and well, if the majority of people want to be absent, maybe you shouldn't be teaching this stuff.
Come on, dear. Come on.
And the fact that we in this society are debating over whether preschool age kids or kids up under 10 years of age should be subjected to all of these things, and that the parents should have no right to determine whether kids are being taught, just goes to show you how far this society has deteriorated.
Yeah.
That this is even a question.
Well, I heard this morning on this topic that they agreed, the Montgomery County School Board unanimously voted that those 5 books that were in question, all LGBTQ pro books teaching kids about gender, ideology, inequality, multiple genders, transgender is okay, homo is okay, LGBTQ is okay. The school board thumbed its nose at the parents and said, we're going to teach this to kindergartners, and this is where this lawsuit's coming in. This father is saying, you know something? If my kid comes home and he tells me that this makes him feel bad, I want to take him out of that class. And the school board is basically telling him, no, you can't. And I'm going to tell you something. They would not want to mess with McDonald here on this with my grandyoungins, because I would lose my lunch, and they will not be teaching my kids stuff about that. That's why I'm grateful my kid homeschools my beautiful 4 perfect grandchildren. But Your Honor, that's a serious matter, and I love what you just said. The very fact that we're having to fight this fight shows you the depravity of our society. It shows you the depravity of this nation right now, and it's sad.
And what people may not be aware of is the fact that Planned Parenthood has pledged to spend millions of dollars to impact these school board races because they want people elected to the school boards that support this agenda. It's demonic, and that's the only word that I can think of to accurately describe this agenda.
Yeah.
It's anti-Christ.
It is anti-Christ. It sure is. It sure is. I got time for one more question, and I'm going to take Jenny's question here because it's really a good one. She says, what can be done? It's actually a great question. She says, what can be done to make the impeached judges process easier in light of the fact that it is so easy for these rogue corrupt judges to circumvent law and order in this country? How can they disregard laws already on the books? And I think what she's saying is this a constitutional issue that can be addressed? In other words, or does this go back down to the feckless Congress we're talking about, where they need this process of impeaching judges needs to be made easier? Because I tend to agree with her that we do have to climb. I mean, to get 2/3 majority in the House and Senate is going to be impossible in this atmosphere, because you're not going to have it. You just that's
well,
a 1 in a million long shot.
I mean, you impeach people, and I've only known judges to be impeached for committing crimes.
Committing crimes, that's right.
For committing crimes, judges are not impeached because we don't like the decisions that they make.
Yeah.
They're impeached because they have high crimes, misdemeanors. I mean, they have to commit a crime while in office, and those are the only judges that I've ever known to be impeached. I know in Pennsylvania, during my career as a judge and as an attorney, I've seen 2 judges impeached, and it was because they were convicted of crimes.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
And so
yeah, go ahead.
It's not going to be. It's not easy to impeach someone just because you don't like the way they chose to interpret the law, even though we know that they're wrong. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very difficult thing to impeach anyone.
Yeah. Amy Miller's got a great question, and it's a troubling question, but I have to tell you, I've wondered about this, and she says, do you worry that typically good citizens, if this keeps up and we're forced to protect ourselves, are they going to start taking matters into their own hands if some sort of justice doesn't start to come, with all being exposed and them not dealing with these illegals? I think that's an excellent question, because, Your Honor, there's a temperature rise out here. Look, I see it in this chat tonight, and I see it every time we get a justice person on. People are getting angry about this stuff. I mean, and I don't advocate. Look, I think, we've got different leadership in D.C., but look, I believe fully the Biden administration was pushing so many buttons. He was salivating. He was hoping the right would try to do something. I think they were getting ready to come down and do some bad things, but I think it's a dangerous thing to take law into your own hands. I would never advocate that, but I'll have to tell you, there's a lot of people that do advocate it, and it's just the atmosphere of the nation. But her question is legitimate. Do you think that there's a danger that if this law system keeps failing us and this law system keeps crumbling, that people are going to say, screw the legal system, and start becoming the law themselves? And it's a legitimate question.
Of course, that there's always a danger of that. But you have to recognize the fact that the ultimate agenda of these people is to create chaos.
Yes.
Is to create chaos, to create confusion.
Yeah.
So that they can provide the solution to the chaos and the confusion.
Yeah.
And the solution will be tyranny.
The solution to the case will be tyranny. Carol Smith, your question, dear, is actually what we just probably answered, because she says, if SCOTUS blocks the deportations and endangers Americans, will Trump be forced to declare martial law as his only recourse? And that, too, plays into the hands of the rebellion in this country, because nobody wants martial law, even at the hands of President Trump. We do not want martial law in this country. We just don't. And it's a concerning question, but it's what do you say? What do you say to that?
Again, the goal is to create chaos.
It is to create chaos. Yes, it is.
It's called, it's to create chaos so they can come up with the solution. And at the end of the day, I think we have to recognize that these are spiritual issues that we're facing, and the solution to these issues is spiritual.
That's so true, John. That is so true.
And I believe the Bible. I believe that biblical prophecy will come to pass. And I believe that for those of us who are believers, who are followers of the way of Jesus Christ, that's what we have to hold on to.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Because at the end of the day, this is not about any of us. This is not about Republican, Democrat. It's not about black or white. It's not about, any particular religion or any particular ethnic group. The idea is to create chaos, to destroy and bring down the system, the government as we know it.
It's. I tell you what it is. It's the insurrection they all claim was J6, which wasn't an insurrection, but what they're doing is a true insurrection tonight. What's going on in this country tonight is a true insurrection.
Right. And it's really a battle, as I said before, it's not a political battle, it's a spiritual battle.
Yes,
it's not a racial battle, it's a spiritual battle. And this is the battle is between the Most High, God, and his enemy, the devil.
So
I'm
true.
sorry, but that is just the truth.
That is the truth.
And so the issue becomes, which side are you on? There's God's side, and then there's the other side.
I said I'm going to let you go, but I got one question I've got to ask. This is a good one. And, folks, I'll get to some of your other questions after we let the judge go. Jeb Abner. Jeb, good to see you tonight. And this is an excellent question. Do federal judges answer judicial complaints? Is there a federal judicial conduct commission? That is an excellent point. Is there a place that basically where the judges are put under scrutiny about their decisions? Because, again, they're not elected, and there seems to be less check and balance on the judicial branch than any branch of our government, and that's not a bad question.
No, it's a very good question, and I certainly know in the state of Pennsylvania there's a judicial there's a court of the judicial discipline. There is a board where you can file complaints against judges, and those complaints are investigated, and sometimes charges are brought, and you may end up before the judicial court of the court of judicial discipline, and judges can be removed from the bench in that manner. I can't really speak to the federal system, but I would imagine that there has to be.
I would think so, too. That's something we can look into.
But I am not as familiar with that system.
We'll look into that. I've got some other questions about this situation in Texas. We're running out of time tonight, and I want to get you back on, and I'll send you an email.
Are you talking about the
Sharia,
the young boy?
Well, not the young boy, but that too. I'd like to ask you about that case. This kid, Carmelo Anthony, where he basically just stabbed this kid to death, and they're basically raising almost $500,000, and the parents have taken the money and bought a house and car with it, and the dad is grieving tonight, and the media is turning Carmelo Anthony into the hero, not the victim. And that's too is another. You can thank the media for some of this, because the media has twisted the law and done that. But the other thing is the Sharia situation in that city that Abbott, Texas. It's almost like the same thing happened to. It's almost insulting. We have to explain to people there's just two genders. Well, to me, it's insulting to tell the country that we're not a Sharia country. We're not Muslim here. We're Americans. We got a Democrat republic. And I hate to tell you that Sharia law is illegal in America, but the Muslim Islamic faith is trying to usurp our Constitution, Your Honor, to do it. And it's happening in a red state. It's happening in the heart of Texas right now.
Well, with regard to the young man who stabbed the young man, killed him, stabbed him in his heart. Again, it's an example of how our country has devolved into this level of because wrong is wrong. Has nothing to do with race, skin color. Wrong is wrong. And we have to be able to call wrong for what it is, wrong. And there's no other way, and there's no justification from what I know about the case for what happened to this young man. None whatsoever.
None whatsoever. No.
And to use and to try. I mean, I listened to this young boy who stabbed the other young boy and his mother, and to hear them act like they're the victims. It's a further indication of the level of immorality and wickedness that has become so prevalent in this country.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And again, when you talk about Sharia law, we live in a country where we have a constitution, and that is the law of this land. And that is not consistent with upholding our constitution is not consistent with the principles of Sharia law.
Yeah.
There's an inconsistency there. It's inconsistent with our constitution. The same people that would advocate for this will yell separation of church and state in a heartbeat.
Come on, buddy.
When it comes to Christianity.
Absolutely. But they're not going to. I tell you what, I dare them to yell church and state with the Muslims and see if their cities don't go up in flames. And these same kids that are basically carrying Palestine flags on the campuses, they're going to bring them to a town near us doing that, because see, we wouldn't dare do it because we'd be afraid of what would happen. But the country would go up in smoke, Your Honor, if they did. And that is, again, the scary state of affairs that we're in this nation tonight. Can I ask you one more question? One more. You there?
I'm here.
Okay. If martial law is declared, who becomes the ruling force of government? Would it be the military? The executive branch?
The executive branch.
That's what I thought. Yes.
And the military.
The military, yeah. And I don't think we want that. Of
course we don't.
I really appreciate you being with us tonight. We're going to have you back on a lot sooner. We've had a busy start of the year, and we're trying to get our feet back underneath us. And I want you to come back next month, and we've got another hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours. I could keep you, but I know it's getting late. Listen, thank you so much. I'm going to give you the final thought tonight. No, I want you to take a time, give us a few final thoughts before we say goodnight. Thank you for being with me. Final thoughts, and we'll wrap it up.
Well, the only thing I can say is none of us have the answers.
No, we don't.
Or all the answers to the problems that our society is facing. I always have to remind myself that there are two things that I cannot forget, or that we must remember about God. One, He's real, and two, we are not Him. we don't have the answers to all of the problems that we're facing, but we know He is the answer. I believe He is the answer and the only answer.
It's so true, my friend.
And we live in a system where people are increasingly being encouraged to replace Him with the government. And the government can only deal with the temporal. He is about the eternal.
Absolutely. So well said. Well, I'm going to be coming up to Eastern Ohio sometime this summer for a conference, and when I do, I'd like to swing over to Pennsylvania. I hope I get to meet you in person one day, but I want to tell you, this has been...
What is the conference?
It'll be in Dalton, Ohio. We haven't set a date yet, but probably sometime this summer or May. It may be May or June, but definitely May. We're looking at there, but I'll let you know. I'll send you some email details personally on that. But I just want to tell you, it's been such a joy having you on this show. Every time you come, you just bring so much information and so much encouragement to the people. And this host is grateful for you, and I appreciate your service to the bench and service to this nation. And we're grateful for your insight tonight, and thank you for staying up late with us, and thank you so much for being with me tonight on a Tuesday Night McFiles. I really deeply appreciate it, friend.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Judge, and we'll see you soon. God bless, friend. Judge Cheryl Lynn Allen, everybody. Put some fire in that house. We are so grateful for her. Be one of my favorite guests. I got several favorite guests. James Akers is a favorite guest. But Judge Cheryl Lynn Allen, I love judicial people. We've been toying with this idea. We used to do a show called McJustice. And we're going to pick one night a month. We can't do it every week because just the way the show flows. But I think maybe the last Friday night of each month or the last Thursday night of each month, we're going to do an hour, hour and a half, 2 hour, 3 hour. With the way the justice system in this country is messed up, I'm not so sure that even taking 3 hours would be enough to discuss the messed up justice system in this country. I was sitting around this week, or it may have been this weekend, resting. And I just downloaded, it had to be 20 videos of people breaking the law in this country. Because people sometimes film the shoplifters and they film the people assaulting people and the police basically taking their life into their hands at a traffic stop. And some of this stuff is it's scary to me. And I want to get back this year to us highlighting that a little bit. But I wish we had about 1 million Judge Cheryl Lynn Allens on that bench tonight. I do. There are judges out there that are trying their best to stop this tyranny, but you know, folks, it's like police officers. There's 1 million good ones, but there are bad apples in every bunch, and there's bad judges, just like there's good judges. And you know, we have to deal with that. We just do, and we're grateful for her tonight and so forth. Anyway, in some of these questions, folks, you know, we will try to answer them at some point. We're going to be doing a late show tonight. If you can come back and be with us, we'll probably be on around 11. We're going to talk about some other things. We're going to talk about the Vatican Church tonight. Late, we'll take your questions. Gloria Garcia, good to see you. She's asking the question, can people recall their money after what the parents have done with the money? Nope, sure can. Once you GoFundMe, I don't think there's a refund button. That money's gone. You know, that's why a GoFundMe account is what it is. People can do with it what they want to do. But that money that's going into their glory, the people that gave them that money, I don't think would really care. I think that they've got people that they've snookered into believing that he's the victim and not the Metcalf boy. And that's just, again, the messed up justice system we've got. That would be a case we would look at on McJustice. And, but no, they can't get their money back to my knowledge. I may be wrong about that. They could sue, I guess, but I don't know if the courts would do it. Let's see here. There was, and the questions about, is it a crime to defy the Constitution? Of course it's a crime. But, again, people are not holding anybody accountable. That's what the problem is. That's what the problem is. And people are saying, how can we save our country from tyranny? Well, it starts at the ballot box. It starts at prayer. It starts with us being vigilant. And folks, you know, look, Judge Allen was as honest and transparent as she could be tonight. There's no easy solution to this. I wish we had a Congress that was functioning. I wish we had legislators that would stop being so worried about going on Fox and promising hearings, and actually do something. But we don't. I'm about over Jim Jordan. I'm over all of them. And Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, I believe in both of these individuals, the Attorney General and the FBI Director. But you know, I'll put it like this: I've told you all to do this, and I'm going to take my own advice. I'm giving this administration till July the 4th. I feel like it's a fair. We need to be very patient still. I know it's April, and I know we're getting antsy out here. We're wanting to see arrest. We're wanting to see things done. And I'm holding my tongue. I'm biting my tongue right now because I want to see things done just like all of you. But there are just some things that the wheels of justice have to flow at a certain pace, or you just totally blow any chance of getting any justice. At this point, I'd be okay with just a little justice. I don't know if we're going to get it. But I'm willing to give Patel, I'm willing to give Bondi, I'm willing to give the Department of Homeland Security to July the 4th. The only person I have to say there's two people that I believe are doing their jobs right now fully, and that's Tom Holman and Pete Hegseth. And that's why the media is trashing both of them like there ain't no tomorrow. That's why the media wants Pete Hegseth out. That's why these left-wing senators want Pete Hegseth out. They're making a big deal about his Signal chat again. We talked about it on the radio today, and Pete basically told him to blank off this morning on Fox News, and I'm proud of him. He's a good man. I've ran into him at CPAC, and he's a down-to-earth guy. He's a down-to-earth. He's young. I told you all this back in January. I've been telling you this in February. This administration is going to make mistakes. But they can't do it by themselves. We're putting a lot of blame on the administration, and we need to sort of spread the blame around to Congress. And folks, ultimately, we need to look in the mirror. We need to look in the mirror. We've allowed this nation to get to this place, and you know it's almost like the frog in the cooker, and that water feels good, and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and before the frog knows it, boom! Before he can jump, that water is burning to death. And I think that the fact of the matter is, and I know folks don't want to hear this, but this is the McFiles tonight. This is my opinion show, and I can express my opinion, folks. We all are to blame. I saw somebody put out there that the church is to blame. Well, we all are to blame. We all are to blame. We are the church. So when you say the church, we need to say we're to blame. We're to blame. It ain't everybody else's fault this country is in the place it's in, folks. We need to take a good hard look in the mirror. And I'm talking to myself tonight. And, you know, I'm not saying that your anxiety is not well-founded. It is. I have it. I want it to be done yesterday. We all are like that. It's just the human nature in all of us. I want to say it again. He's only been in office 3 months. Coming up April the 20th. When was April 20th? 2 days ago. That was the 90-day period. And in another 10 days, which would put us around May the 15th, that'll be 100 days in office. And I think people are expecting him to have done in 100 days what most presidents can't get done in 8 years. Trump ain't got 8 years. He's got 4 years. Give his administration and this cabinet a chance. If by July 4th, this status quo is still ongoing, and we're still seeing these things take place, then you may hear Chris change his tune. But I'm willing to give them some leverage here and a little bit of leeway, a little bit of understanding. And I think you should too. Now, you ain't got to. You can lose your lunch over it and blame everybody else and blame Patel and blame Bondi and blame the courts and blame this. Folks, this country is only a mirror of us. This nation's only a mirror of us. When you get down to it, it's only a mirror of us. And we can blame everybody else we want to. But sometimes we just need to say, Lord, it's all of our faults, and we need to repent for what we've allowed this country to become. Trump can't fix this nation, folks. Trump is a man. He's just one man. Puts his pants and shirt on, tied just like I do. Now, granted, his cost more than mine. But he's still just a man. I believe the man's anointed by God. I do. I believe that God put him in this place. And I heard Ann Coulter, who I don't really have a lot of respect for, but I will say that Ann said something the other night that was right, and I think we've said it on this show. We're probably, the Lord was looking out for us in 2020, allowing what to happen, even though it put the country through hell itself. Maybe it shook some people up to realize that things got to change. Trump gets back in. He's got a mandate. He's got a mandate of the people. But, folks, the headwinds that he's fighting is probably 10 times worse than he ever dreamed of fighting in 2016. We need to pray for him. But we need to pray for ourselves. We need to stop trying to find a boogeyman and stop trying to find a scapegoat to put our anxiety on and say, well, the reason this is happening is so-and-so or that or this or this. No. We need to stop blaming people, and we need to start interceding and praying and saying, Lord, we're sorry that we've let our nation get to this point, and we need your divine help to get us out of it. I think that's a start. And that's a spiritual solution. The political solution is not as easy. And I'm not saying the spiritual solution is much easier, because, look, folks, we reap what we sow. Be not mocked, God's not deceived. Whatever a man or a nation soweth, that shall it also reap. But on a political note, be patient. Be patient. Trump cannot wave a magic wand and make all this go away. And he's fighting forces. And his cabinet's fighting forces. And the nation is fighting forces that literally are trying to destroy it. And we've got 4 minutes before we end this early show. Now listen, we're going to be back tonight late when all the kids have gone to bed. And I get the adults in the house. And we're going to let it all hang out around 11 o'clock. We're going to take your questions. We're going to play some video. We're going to talk about the 6 candidates that are out there for the next pope. And some thoughts on these 6 candidates. Names that you need to know about. And we'll take your questions. We're not going to have a guest tonight unless I change my mind. Ain't nobody up this hour of the night except you West Coast folks. But anyway. Anyway. All right, listen, we're grateful for you tonight. Well, Jeb, tell Beth Van Dyne to call me. I don't know her, and if you think she'd be a fantastic guest, you got my email, you got the way to contact me, put her in contact with us. A lot of these people like that, they don't never, it's hard to reach them. So if you know her, get her. Get her. We're grateful for you that have been with us tonight, and we hope that you'll come back and be with us later tonight. We're grateful for you. Folks, pray for your country. And Gloria, I know we need prayer and fasting, but there are people that are praying and fasting. There are people that are doing it. There's a lot of people doing it. And I just think that some of this we need to recognize, and we're going to talk about it tonight, folks. We're in the end times. We are in a prophetic vacuum of time, folks. We are getting ready to wrap this thing up. And the Bible, you know, there's an old song of the 70s. Oh, my darling, I never promised you a rose garden along with the sunshine. There would be some thorns sometime. Boy, I need to become a country music singer, I think. It's pretty good. But anyway, if this gig falls to the ground, I guess that's what I can go do is go singing them country music award shows. Get on American Idol. I would flop so bad it wouldn't be funny. No, I'm doing what I'm called to do. But let me tell you something, folks. It ain't going to be a rose garden. We need to toughen ourselves up and realize that. It's not everybody else that needs to be doing it. We're all doing it. We're all doing our part tonight, but we all need to be doing it. But there are people that are praying and fasting. But we're in the end times. And we're going to be facing some things, folks, that ain't going to be too pleasant. And we might as well come to grips with that. And we need to toughen up and grow up. Can I just say that tonight? Not to sound snarky and mean, because I'm not being snarky and mean. I'm being Papa Bear McDonald. Where's my bear hat? What have I done with my bear hat? This is a bear hat night. But some of us need to grow up and recognize that. Just a thought. Listen, I love you tonight. God bless you. God bless this country. God bless the United States of America, and God bless your families out there. I will see you back here around 11 o'clock tonight, the Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. See ya.